Hello and welcome to another episode of Calm the Conflict, the Art of Resolution with myself, Zakia, commercial litigation solicitor and debt recovery trainer to businesses.
Thanks. And I'm David Goldberg, a CEDA accredited mediator, Legal 500 recognised, and also on the ADR group panel.
And today we're going to look at how mediation has developed over the years. David, I'm going to start with sort of when you first started out in mediation, it wasn't that common. It was always there in the background in any, in an alternative dispute resolution world. But it wasn't up until more recently where we've had some case law and updates of the civil procedure rules where the courts now have powers to compel parties to mediate. Tell me what your thoughts are on all of that process.
Yeah, so professionally, I've been litigating for almost 30 years. And as you say, ADR has always been on the radar. So mediation was, when I started, didn't exist. It was just, giving it lip service if you wanted to do it. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, it became more recognised. Some of the case law came out about that time and people were sort of slightly more focused on it. And some of the organisations like CEDA and the ADR group came on board and started sort of doing whatever they do and making it more common. But it is definitely something that has expanded. And case law is now making it obligatory. The CPR, as you say, the rules are in there. But I think the reality is litigators have always done it. It's what we do. Part of the litigation armory is, you can bash heads, but you also need to step back and have without prejudice conversations.
Yeah, and I was going to say, those settlement discussions, though, I'm just trying to think back 20 years ago when I first started out. A lot of it was done through correspondence and formal Part 36 offers, or without prejudice meetings, sort of informal meetings around a table, which I've done in the past. But I think I used very few formal mediators. Yeah. But I'm seeing it more and more common in the cases that I'm doing now, that actually there's a need to have an independent mediator.
I think that's right. So again, my history is the same as yours. So a litigator, yes, litigated in correspondence. Obviously, Part 36 offers only came in much later, but without prejudice offers and everything else came in. But I think it's just something that I have, and I'm sure you have, we've just always done. You're always looking for the angle. It's getting the solution that you want for your client, whatever that is. But I think the beauty of the whole mediation concept and the reason it's taking off, and I think stats-wise, I think CEDA say something like 89, 90% of mediations settle, which is great. And my experience of that is that they do. I mean, the ones that I've done with you settled.
They're both,
They both settled, so that's a good start. But I think taking a step back, and the litigators obviously have had a position. And I think also, as litigation has become, the parties have become perhaps, or the opposing parties have become slightly more attuned to finding resolution rather than fighting. And I think the courts are encouraging that. And I'm tending to find, certainly from the bigger firms, they are much more amenable to mediating with a third party. I think the third party is essential. The independent mediator, independent body dropped in, because otherwise you're arguing your client's position all the time.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that falls on deaf ears with the other side, because they know that for me, my client is who I work on behalf of. So I'm going to be led by my client, or my client's going to be led by me. Yep. So I'm in their corner. And then if I'm doing a without prejudice meeting, trying to settle a case, the other side they're already hearing my voice through letters to communications, but having an independent voice in there that's impartial, actually, I find works a lot better.
100%. I mean, there's never say no to the parties' lawyers talking to each other, and I think that's happening more and more. But as you say, you're both in a position, and you've got a stance to take, and it's not easy for somebody to turn around and say, actually, that bit of your case, your client's case, is a bit weak as Zakia, isn't it? I mean, just between you and I, with the client, you've got 4 points. Those 2 points, do we really want to be focusing those, or let's focus on the other two? And if I'm having the conversation with the opponent as well, those are not points that you are going to ever say or get across to the other side. And I'm not necessarily going to say it to the other side, but if I can say it to you, it tempers your client's approach, tempers your approach, and that's why I think in an independent third party being dropped in, as the stats say, and my experience and yours experience, it works.
Absolutely.
And therefore it's definitely worth doing.
But do you think it's right for it to be made compulsory? That's the thing. I think when small claims mediation came in, it's been made mandatory, and that was last year. It's just been over a year. And again, the stats with HMCTS say that it's been hugely successful. And I've seen quite a few settle, but I see quite a few that don't. But, you know, there was a party, you know, there was a group of people that actually said, well, why should we be made to mediate? You know, we've already taken all these steps to try and settle this case. We had to issue court proceedings. And now you're telling us that actually it's compulsory and a mediation date is set by the court, and you've got to mediate. That choice isn't really there not to take it.
Stepping aside from the politics, the answer is that mediation works. I know it. You know it. As I said, CEDA have got stats that show it. The judges know it. So, you know, minds greater than ours have taken the view, actually, it is a sensible thing to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think most litigators will accept, actually, rather than fighting for 18 months and spending huge amounts of money, lots of stress and aggravation, it's got to be worth giving it a go.
Oh, and the number of cases that actually settle a day or two, if not on the day of trial. Yeah. I mean, I've seen that happen time and time and time again. And that's what I tell my clients from my experience. Try and settle early to save all that cost, because you don't want to be settling on the doorsteps of the court.
Absolutely. I agree, 100%. I think the point is, give it a go. And, you know, and nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah, and again, if ultimately parties do not want to take part in mediation, they don't have to. You just explain the risks of not doing so, and that's between the solicitors and the clients.
I think the risks of not engaging in a mediation are becoming greater and greater costs-wise. The judiciary are quite hot on that now, and I think, you know, it's more beneficial to the client to not run that risk. And I've not really come across many people that have refused to mediate. They might come in reluctantly to start with, but I don't think anybody has actually said, I'm not prepared to mediate. I'm sure there are. You know, there are perfectly good reasons.
As we do more and more of these episodes, we will probably get to a stage where we look at a case where cost sanctions have been applied for failing to mediate, because we are seeing cases coming through the process now where parties haven't actually mediated. So it'll be quite interesting to see that. So thank you very much, listeners, and we'll be back with another episode all about mediation.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by Right Here Creative, a video creative agency based in Oxfordshire. Check them out at rightherecreative.co.uk.